What if, tucked away in the deepest, most secure archives, there was a secret vault of unfinished material from the greatest band in history? I mean, not just rough sketches or quickly jotted notes, but fragments of genuine genius songs abandoned mid-recording, shimmering of potential that shine a spotlight on the group's final, chaotic years.
That's precisely the material we're diving into today. We are looking beyond, the 212 songs that define the official canon, the records you know by heart, and examining the remnants. These sources, they range from deep musicological analysis to modern technological breakthroughs, and they give us access to the demos, the outtakes, and all these song fragments that never made the official track list.
Right.
And the deepest insight we get isn't really about the specific songs. It's about the intense pressures and internal conflicts that both fueled and ultimately frustrated the late-era Beatles' creativity.
So our mission today is to explore the mystery of these lost tracks for you.
Yeah.
We'll follow their turbulent journey. First, understanding the sheer frustration and tension that caused these brilliant ideas to be shelved. Second, we'll dive into the strange, specific details of a few of these forgotten songs. And finally, we'll see how modern technology has literally resurrected some of them decades later.
And the key takeaway, I think, is understanding that this period wasn't always a smooth process of four friends creating magic. Often it was a battle against competing egos and clashing artistic visions, and that struggle is audible in the recordings they just couldn't complete.
Okay, so let's start by unpacking this really difficult period, specifically the sessions around the White Album. What strikes me about that era is how quickly the creative environment just became toxic. The sources suggest that by 1968, fragmentation wasn't just a challenge, it was like policy. Was the shift to working solo in 3 different studios simultaneously the result of creative growth, or was it purely avoidance?
Oh, it was absolutely avoidance. And the engineer logs, they confirm the cost of that. Using 3 separate studios at once is crucial because it represents a logistical and, a creative retreat from their core identity.
From who they were, yeah.
For years, they had been a collaborative unit, all in the same room, bouncing ideas in real time. Suddenly, they're individual artists just using the band's name. It reflects that new individual rather than group focus.
And the atmosphere suffered immediately. George Harrison, for example, he'd written some fantastic material, but the musicological analysis shows his contributions were frequently stymied by the atmosphere.
Stymied is the perfect word. The professional fallout from this tension was immediate and intense. We know that engineer Jeff Emmerich, who'd worked with them through their most innovative years, eventually quit.
He just walked out.
He just couldn't handle the constant arguing and swearing, particularly the crossfire between Paul and George Martin and then between Paul and George Harrison.
Can we just pause on that for a second? I mean, Emmerich was so drained that he needed out immediately. And John Lennon's reaction to Emmerich leaving is equally revealing.
Oh, absolutely.
He blamed the studio itself, called it incarceration, saying, "It's not you, Jeff, it's this studio. We're just incarcerated in here." But then he immediately turned to Paul to dismiss their recent masterpiece, G-Tape Peppers, as a load of shit.
Right.
Doesn't that one anecdote just reveal that the tension wasn't just professional, it was like existential?
It perfectly illustrates the psychological friction. I mean, when the pressure is that high, you lash out at what's closest and most sacred. Their internal exhaustion meant nothing was off limits.
And that toxicity just stalled everything.
It stalled the creative output we're now examining. And, the clash wasn't just personal, it was fundamentally musical.
How so?
Well, John was leaning heavily into the experimental and the avant-garde chaotic spoken word pieces like Revolution 9. He was also moving toward these deeply confessional lyrics, like the psychiatric nature of songs written earlier, like Help.
While Paul's style, based on the material they were attempting to record, was much more variable. It was broad-ranging in themes and musical structures. He was exploring, like novel harmony and modulation, taking risks across different genres.
Baroque pop, vaudeville pastiche, all of it.
Yeah.
So when you have two geniuses pulling in such different directions, one toward pure intuition and the avant-garde, the other toward structural perfection, sometimes the ideas simply hit a wall. And that leads us to the 2 main reasons songs were shelved.
Which were?
They were either too technically difficult to realize, or they were deemed simply too weak to warrant the fight.
The source material points to a specific technical puzzle that not even George Martin could solve. The song That Means a Lot, a Lennon-McCartney tune.
Right.
And it was shelved precisely because, as they put it, the band and Martin just couldn't find out how to record it in the studio.
And you contrast that inability to capture a sound With the sheer lack of confidence in material like George Harrison's You'll Know What to Do, which was considered too weak for inclusion, it just stayed a demo until the anthology releases decades later.
So they shelved things for two opposite reasons.
Exactly. Either they couldn't nail the sound or they just deemed the quality insufficient for a Beatle record during this highly self-critical phase.
So the tension left us with this fascinating archive of abandoned songs, the technically impossible and the personally discarded. Let's look at the fascinating results.
Okay, this is where the source details become incredibly vivid. Let's start with George Harrison's Vindication piece, Not Guilty. This was attempted in August 1968, but excluded from the White Album.
This is a highly personal track. I mean, the lyrics read like a legal defense.
That's because it was one. Harrison wrote it in direct reaction to the grief he was catching from Lennon and McCartney after they all returned from India.
He felt he had to stick up for himself.
For himself, for the Maharishi trip, other personal choices, lyrically declaring he wasn't guilty of holding back their careers or being the cause of their division.
But the personal drama wasn't the only reason it failed to make the cut. It was also the musical difficulty that stymied them in the studio.
Exactly. The band struggled immensely with the song's challenging structure, specifically a tricky section written in 38 time.
Right, which is very unusual.
Think of trying to switch from a 4-count dance beat to a 3-count waltz mid-song. It disrupts the flow. And it's so telling that when Harrison re-recorded it for his solo album a decade later, in '79, he omitted that difficult 38 section entirely.
Wow.
It just proves that some of their best compositions were also technical hurdles they couldn't clear as a group.
Okay, now let's switch to John's corner. We talked about his embrace of experimental chaos. And the best surviving example of that from the sessions is What's the New Mary Jane?
Ah, yes. This surreal, highly experimental piece, also recorded in August 1968, is so characteristic of John's embrace of avant-garde composition.
He was a very intuitive composer.
Very. He often used uneven phrase lengths, unusual harmonic twists, and this track is just a soundscape of found instruments and chaotic sound effects.
It was so far removed from the mainstream that it almost became a Plastic Ono Band single.
It did, yeah, alongside You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, which just reinforces how far John was straying from the traditional pop format. For him, the studio was a place of endless, unedited possibility.
Which clashed completely with Paul's meticulous structuring.
Completely.
And speaking of meticulous, but in the quirkiest way, let's look at Paul McCartney's incredible piece of studio trickery. The ultimate miniature, Wild Honey Pie.
Yes.
It's only 53 seconds long, but it contains a masterclass in production.
It is pure creative desperation channeled into quirky art. The sources describe it as a complete miniature, purposely placed on the White Album to act as a distraction and a bridge between tracks.
Between Obla Di, Obla Da, and Bungalow Bill.
Right. It's this theatrical exploitation of the LP medium, a brief moment of musical palate cleansing.
And the unique production detail here is what's so memorable. Paul achieved that recognizable fluttering sound of the acoustic guitar by physically manipulating the tape machine.
He deliberately brushed his hand over the metal spool of tape while it rotated at 15 inches per second.
Wow.
This warped the sound, simulating a cassette tape playing when the machine's battery was almost flat. It's a perfect example of their late-era creativity. If they couldn't solve a problem with composition, they solved it by turning technical limitations into quirky, boundary-pushing art.
If you're enjoying these deep dives into music history and the secrets hidden in the archives, make sure you follow the show and tell us what other forgotten archive material you want us to crack open next. So these fragments, they remain frozen in time, incomplete, for decades. But the story doesn't end in 1970. We now move forward to the technological breakthrough that made it possible to finally finish the unfinishable, starting with a revolutionary piece of software.
That revolutionary technology is ML, or machine-assisted learning. This neural network was developed by Peter Jackson's Wingnut films. Yeah, and interestingly, the name is not only a nod to the antagonistic computer HAL from 2001, Space Odyssey, but it's also named after their former longtime Rude manager, Mal Evans.
And what makes ML so essential to this resurrection project compared to the audio tools they had in the 1990s?
The difference is its highly specific training. ML was trained solely on Beatles music, essentially learning the distinct sonic fingerprint of John's voice, Paul's bass, Ringo's drums, and so on.
So it knows what to listen for.
It knows exactly what it's listening for. Its
Uh-huh.
core function is isolation. It can separate instruments, vocals, and even specific conversations from extremely dense, messy recordings. This is why it was used so extensively for the Get Back documentary and the new Revolver remix.
This sophisticated isolation technology was the key to unlocking what's been dubbed the last Beatles song, Now and Then. And the sources revealed just how impossible this track was to finish back when they first tried.
The original stumbling block was John's 1977 demo tape. His voice and the piano accompaniment were enshrouded in too dense a thicket of abrasively scratchy hiss.
That's a great description.
Isn't it? When the surviving Beatles first tried to finish it in 1995 for the Anthology project, the 90s technology simply couldn't isolate the vocal. Any attempt to boost John's voice also boosted the noise and the clunky piano track.
So George got frustrated.
George Harrison, frustrated, eventually went off it, which led to its abandonment.
So Amel solved the problem of audio density.
It did. By using a better digital copy of the demo tape, Amel was able to finally separate John Lennon's isolated vocal from the piano track and the background noise, preserving its clarity and intimacy. That was the crucial step.
That allowed Paul and Ringo to work on it decades later with a clean slate.
Exactly.
And the final production became a powerful tribute in itself, connecting all the eras of the band.
It was incredibly moving. Paul recorded a new melodic bass line, new piano parts, and crucially, a slide guitar solo in Harrison style as a direct tribute to his late bandmate.
A tribute to George.
A direct tribute. Ringo added a finalized drum track, and they also integrated the original 1995 guitar parts that George had recorded before the project was abandoned. It truly united all four musicians across time.
And the release was accompanied by such a sentimental detail. Olivia Harrison, George's widow, shared a lovely anecdote about the song's debut.
She did. As Paul called her to discuss the release, she looked up and saw a clock George had owned, a timepiece that incorporated the words now and then in its design.
Wow.
She felt it was a cosmic sign of his approval for the song's release, decades after he had walked away from that original recording session.
This ongoing process of restoration,
Mm.
it really highlights how critical these fragments are. These unfinished moments continue to fuel fan fascination, which is why we're seeing deluxe reissues and compilations like Anthology 3 that finally brought those original Beatles versions of Not Guilty and What's the New Mary Jane to light.
Absolutely. The market wants the history, warts and all. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these unfinished songs highlight the central paradox of the late Beatles. The greatest songwriting team often struggled the most with finishing work, precisely because of the intense creative competition and the, rapidly evolving stylistic differences between John and Paul.
It was never simple.
Composition was never simple or easy for them, especially in that fractured era, and these tracks are the documented proof of that difficulty.
Absolutely. The early Beatles lyrics were characterized by immediacy, and direct address songs like From Me to You were simple and direct. Yeah. But as the group matured, the linguistic style in their writing became darker, more psychologically distant, and less immediate.
That's a great way to put it.
And this journey from simple pop perfection to complex psychological distance is perfectly encapsulated in the struggles we see in these unfinished songs. They show us their most vulnerable creative moments.
A fascinating and deeply humanizing look into the workings of genius under extreme pressure.
The technology now exists to rescue virtually any lost recording from noise and density. So if you could use MAL to finally finish one unfinished song by any artist, maybe an obscure Hendrix jam or a forgotten Nirvana demo, which one would it be and why? Let us know your choice, and we'll see you next time for the Deep Dive.